Good morning and welcome to today's New Year Council hearing for the Committee on Public Safety. If you wish to submit testimony, you may at testimony@council.nyc.gov. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. Thank you for your cooperation. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Good morning. Hello, I am Council Member Camila Hanks, Chair on the Committee of Public Safety, and I am joined today by Council Members Stevens and Council Member Williams. Today's committee is holding an oversight hearing on supporting providers serving city's crisis management system. The committee will also hear two pieces of related legislation, introduction number 439, sponsored by Councilmember Natasha Williams, which requires the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice to evaluate the effectiveness of criminal justice programs that received funding from the city. And introduction number 756, sponsored by myself, which requires the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice to provide training and operational support to not-for-profit service providers participating in New York City's crisis management. The New York City Crisis Management System, also known as CMS, is a violence reduction program based in part on the Cure Violence model, which aims to prevent gun violence using a community-based public health approach. This anti-violence model works to detect and interrupt conflicts, identify and treat individuals at the highest risk of committing violent acts and change social norms. To prevent patterns of escalating violence and retaliation, CMS relies on credible messengers, also known as violence interrupters. These trained individuals are culturally competent community members, many of whom are formerly incarcerated or previously belonged to a gang. They provide credibility that is crucial to conducting outreach and building relationships with high-risk youth. CMS also includes community-based wraparound services and interventions in targeted neighborhoods such as mental health services for youth at risk for violence, legal advocacy and education, therapeutic services available to victims and community members impacted by gun violence, and increased investment in educational placement, job readiness, and training. Currently, CMS consists of more than 50 community-based organizations operating in 22 communities experiencing high rates of gun violence. In recent years, the city significantly increased its investment in CMS, expanding the program's funding to more than $100 million in fiscal year 2022. However, I believe that there is more that the city can be doing to help service providers doing anti-violence work. As CMS grows, the city must provide the support, resources, and funding that is necessary to deliver high-quality services. My bill, Introduction 756, aims to do just that, requiring MOCJ to provide training and operational support to not-for-profit organizations participating in the city crisis management system. I am eager to hear testimony from MOCJ regarding this legislation and to learn more about existing efforts in the administration and how it takes to support this important work and help these service providers thrive. With that, I look forward to hearing the administration and public testimony. And I'm also joined by Public Advocate Giovanni Williams. Thank you so much for joining us today. So you want to say that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. Before we begin testimony, we're going to turn to the Public Advocate, Giovanni Williams, and Councilmember Natasha Williams, who's the sponsor of one of the legislations being heard. So, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for giving me a moment to speak. My name is Giovanni Williams, and I'm Public Advocate of the City of New York. Again, thank you to the Chair and the members for the Committee for Public Safety for holding this important hearing. The stress and trauma of the COVID-19 pandemic led to an increase of violence, particularly gun violence, in our city. Although the spike in gun violence has begun to decline, even one shooting is too many. We must also make clear that this violence has increased all across the country, but New York City does have an opportunity to lead. While it may be necessary to make an arrest and take a person who has perpetrated an act of gun violence off the streets, it is clear that traditional policing by itself cannot address the root problems of the root of the problem, and thus does not have the long-term effects that we desire. In September of this year, my office released a report on reimagining gun violence prevention, which outlined a number of alternative solutions to traditional policing. Mayor Adams and I sometimes disagree on the most impactful ways to address crime and violence in our city, but I applaud his support of alternatives, solutions to violence, including violence interrupters and crisis management system. I'm also proud to have been one of the leading voices getting this off the ground. So to see this go from the $5 million originally allotted to where it is now makes me very proud. The city's crisis management system is a network that deploys teams of credible managers. It's actually, the crisis management system is a network that is centered around credible messengers who help mediate conflicts on the street. But it also does so much more than that. It helps connect high-risk individuals to services that can reduce the long-term services and risk of violence. We made sure that the crisis management system was not just the Cure Violence program, but also provided non-punitive wraparound services, including school conflict mediation, employment programs, mental health services, and legal services. We have evidence that alternatives to policing work to reduce violence. CMS data from 2010 to 2019 did the opposite of what people said would happen. They told us the sky would fall in and crime would rise. But we show that the program has contributed to an average 40% reduction in shootings across program areas compared to a 31% decline in shootings in the 17 precincts in New York City with the highest rates of violence. We also found that violence decreased in those catchment areas even further than the city as a whole. Brownsville, Brooklyn's 73rd precinct exemplifies the success and necessity of these type of programs. In December 2020, police withdrew from their regular posts on Mother Gaston Boulevard for 5 days. Instead of a police presence, a CMS group was called Brownsville In, Violence Out, watched over the 2 blocks between Pitkin and Sutter Avenues. No valid 911 or 311 calls were made during this pilot. Second round of this experiment a few months later saw the Cure Violence Group and their community partners finding a missing 4-year-old and intervening in a fight brewing between groups of teenage girls, all without the help of police. I also want to shout out CCD, run by Kay Bain. I'm very proud of that because he was the legislative director at the time when we got this off the ground. And the catchment area he has in Queensbridge went a whole year, the largest public housing in the country, went a whole year with no shootings at all. This is what public safety can look like: an investment in communities, robust services, and allowing those closest to the problem to lead the solution. I absolutely understand that our law enforcement partners are necessary. The problem is when we ask them to do the job of so many others. That is why I'm expressing my support and hope to sign on to Intro 0756, introduced by Chair Hanks, which would require the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice to provide training and operational support to not-for-profit organizations participating in CMS. Also integral to expand the system is Intro 0439, which I'd also like to sign on to, introduced by Councilmember Natasha Williams, which mandates that MOCJ evaluate the performance of any organization that received funding from the city for criminal justice-related services and submit a summary of the evaluation to the mayor and the speaker. As a matter of fact, when we had the original pilot program, there was funding made available for this program to be evaluated. I'm not sure what happened. Thank you to both Chair Hanks and Councilmember Williams for introducing these important bills. As widespread support for alternatives to policing grows, I'm excited to work with the Mayor's Office and the City Council to support and expand these critical programs and services that have been proven to keep New Yorkers safe. As I mentioned, this is a problem all across the country, and I also know that that data means nothing to people who are suffering in the city. We have an opportunity to lead here, and we should. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Public Advocate.
Councilmember Williams has a statement as well.
Thank you so much, Chair, for holding this very important hearing. I am excited that my bill, Intro 439, is being heard today, a local law to amend the New York City Charter in relation to requiring the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice to evaluate the effectiveness of criminal justice programs that are receiving funding from the city. This bill would require the Criminal Justice Office to evaluate the performance of the city-funded criminal justice-related organizations and provide a summary of such evaluations that must be submitted to the mayor and the council annually. Crisis management organizations are dedicated to identifying and de-escalating potential acts of violence, as well as preventing them from happening. They are devoted to keeping the public informed about potential threats, and they also help communities respond to crises in an organized way. In my former role as a board member at a crisis management organization, I'm personally well aware of the importance of protecting our communities. As they say, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure, and these groups are providing vital preventative solutions to the community. Because crisis management organizations are integral to our communities, it is necessary to ensure that they are operating at their optimal capacity. Intro 439 will provide transparency on the effectiveness of these programs to see areas that might need improvement, but more importantly, to highlight the amazing work that is already being done and figure out ways to duplicate efforts and implement these solutions and practices throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Next, we'll turn to the administration for testimony. For the administration, we're going to be hearing from the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, Noor Daniel, who's the Chief of Staff. We also have Sarah Castle, who's the Director of Alternatives Incarceration and Reentry Services, Kana Osborne, who's the Deputy Executive Director of the Office of Neighborhood Safety, Karina Christensen, who's the Deputy Executive Director of the Office of Neighborhood Safety, and then Rodney Carvajal, who's the another Senior Director of the Office of Neighborhood Safety. So, Ms. Daniel, you could begin. I'm going to do a little oath here, so if you all could just confirm, so you're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth before this committee, and to answer honestly to councilmember questions. You all do? Great, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Hanks, members of the public, members of the Committee on Public Safety, and Public Advocate Williams. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony to the council. My name is Noor Daniel, and I'm Chief of Staff for the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. I'm joined today by Sarah Cassell, Director of Diversion and Reentry Initiatives, and from the Office of Neighborhood Safety, ONS, Deputy Executive Directors Kana Osborne and Karina Christensen, and Rodney Carvajal, Senior Director for ONS. Thank you so much for the opportunity. MOCJ advises the mayor on public safety policy and designs and implements programs and justice initiatives from the New York City Crisis Management System to alternatives to incarceration and reentry services. We work with law enforcement agencies and personnel, other city agencies, service providers, not-for-profits, foundations, and the public to implement effective strategies that make the city safe and fair for all New Yorkers. Recognizing the interconnected and holistic nature of public safety in historically disinvested communities that also experience the brunt of heightened levels of gun violence, in December 2021, this body codified the Office of Neighborhood Safety. ONS, housed within MOCJ, is a crucial component of the public safety continuum and is a necessary part of our efforts to co-produce public safety in partnership with local communities. ONS combines efforts from the Mayor's Action Plan for Neighborhood Safety, MAP, the Office to Prevent Gun Violence, OPGV, and Atlas to share resources and holistic assistance for New Yorkers affected by violence. ONS's teams work with our network of residents and community leaders to ensure that more New Yorkers have the agency and ability to define public safety directly for themselves. As such, ONS relies on the strength, experience, and expertise of community as guiding principles and is committed to ensuring that marginalized communities have access to capital and opportunities. Given these initiatives' goal of enhancing safety, Atlas, OPGV, and MAP serve overlapping populations in the city's highest crime neighborhoods. All three programs are part of a larger effort to reduce violence and prevent and minimize criminal justice involvement by addressing the root causes of violence that have disproportionately impacted ONS's service communities. I will share here a few more details about the OPGV portfolio and the crisis management system. Launched in 2014, OPGV works to address gun violence through a shift in social norms and the work of community members in mediating disputes to prevent shootings. The Crisis Management System, CMS, deploys teams of credible messengers, community members whose backgrounds allow them to connect with and motivate at-risk individuals, to 31 sites where they implement the Cure Violence model of mediating conflicts on the street and direct New Yorkers to services that can create peace and support healing, including a year-round employment program, mental health services, trauma counseling, and other opportunity-centered resources. This initiative has brought measurable benefits to communities citywide. Researchers found that across CMS sites, shooting victimizations fell by 28% over the first 24 months following a site launch, compared to the 24 months prior to the launch, with gun injuries down 33%. Researchers also found that CMS increased trust in police and decreased residents' reliance on violence to settle disputes. As a part of the city's historic investment in public safety and in partnership with the City Council, the city increased its commitment to CMS and anti-violence work by launching an RFP for the CMS system in FY22. The RFP awards will be announced in the spring of 2023. The administration continues to improve its commitment to innovative programming that enhances safety within communities. In addition to investments in CMS, the city is also expanding its MAP programming to include a total of 30 MAP sites, up from 15. We are looking forward to implementing this programming in the coming months. I'll now elaborate a little bit on the bills the council has introduced. Intro 439 would require MOCJ to submit an annual report on criminal justice programs, including alternatives to incarceration, reentry, and other programs. We are supportive of the goals of Intro 439, and we look forward to working with the council to ensure that we're able to present the information in the manner that would best demonstrate the effectiveness of the programs. Intro 756 would require MOCJ to provide training and operational support to organizations in the crisis management system. MOCJ supports the goals of Intro 756, and we are committed to providing the support that CMS organizations need to thrive. Currently, CMS providers are subcontracted through Block Power. Under this subcontract, CMS providers have been afforded one-on-one support through the subcontracting process to ensure that they are able to fulfill the administrative requirements of contracting, while continuing to provide the vital services that support our city's public safety continuum. In addition, recently, CMS providers participated in a nonprofit capacity building workshop provided as a partnership between MOCJ and the law firm Cleary, Gottlieb, Steen, and Hamilton. We're grateful to Cleary for their support in that. We are currently working with Cleary to schedule a second workshop and other supports as needed. ONS continues to explore ways to provide additional support to CMS providers to ensure that they have the training and foundation required to operate their programs. The administration is grateful for the council's support of the crisis management system and our criminal justice programs, and we look forward to working with you to implement the goals of the bills. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony on MOCJ's work, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Daniels. Before I allow my colleague, Councilmember Williams, to kick off the questioning, I would like to recognize Councilmembers Bottcher, Councilmember Holden, and De La Rosa, who have joined us. So thank you. Councilmember Williams, I was going to defer to you.
Chair is so gracious. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Can you tell me what research found that across CMS sites, shooting victimizations fell by 20%? Like, where does that research come from? Do you have a source?
It was a John Jay study done, I believe, in 2014. And, you know, we're always looking to continue to evaluate the programs.
Okay. Have you done any recent evaluations of the programs? And if so, what is the methodology of the evaluations?
So we're continuously monitoring the programs, and we are currently in the process of an independent evaluation through a federal grant. When we have more on that, we will definitely share it.
Okay, and our crisis management organizations, could you share with us sort of what metrics of success they're held to, if you can?
Sure. So we work with organizations to ensure that they're appropriately responding to shootings, that they're involved in the community, and that they are consistently performing on their programs. Each site has a variety of programs, and so we work with them to make sure that those programs are being administered effectively.
Okay, do you have a specific criteria you use to evaluate new needs within the CMS system? So for instance, I have my own little theories about the cure violence model perhaps needing to be reworked, considering like the nature of crimes. Like a lot of crimes now are originating online, and the original cure violence ceasefire programs really were about physical, in-person, in the street sort of activity, if you will. So do you have a way to assess or criteria to evaluating new needs, new models?
So, you know, as we're looking at the independent evaluation, we are consistently working with organizations to help them to develop methods to, or ways to improve whatever it is that they're doing. So because each community is different, some of those things can look different depending on what people are seeing. I hear you about that models can be different depending on what's happening and when they were developed and new technologies that come out. And I definitely think it's worth having a conversation about, if there's something specific that you're seeing within your district and how we might be able to be helpful.
Okay, I noticed on your list that Life Camp says that it's in my council district, but their office is located in the speaker's district. Can you explain that map? I don't know if it was a mistake. I mean, Life Camp just goes everywhere, really, but they technically are placed in the speaker's district.
I understand. I believe they also do work in yours as well. So I think that we have it as both. But if there was a mistake, we can correct it.
Yeah, it doesn't have it as both. And I'm aware of some things that they do in my district. Like I know they have a program at Eagle Academy that's in my district, but for the most part, a lot of their work is Southside, which, I only have a slither of Southside. It's really the speaker's district. And a little bit of the Southside that I do have, King of Kings is actually a little closer.
So we can definitely talk about what services are available in your district, and we can correct the list if there's a mistake.
Okay. The last thing that I'll say, I know we actually foiled the contracts, but you all redacted the sections that we actually wanted to see, which was, what was the sections out there that we wanted to see?
Scope of work.
Yeah, we wanted to actually see the scope of work. So what are crisis management organizations actually supposed to deliver? And you guys redacted that information. So can you actually tell us what is the scope of work in the contracts? And maybe some of the contracts look a little different, but if you can give us a general sense of what is the scope of work in the contracts with the crisis management organizations?
So scopes of work, each organization has their own scopes of work, but generally speaking, for a CMS site, you have the Credible Messenger Secure Violence, you have school conflict mediation, and you have therapeutic services. But if we have more specific questions about, if there's specific things that you would like to see that aren't being done, or specific things that you're very interested in that you would like to see enhanced, we can definitely discuss that as well. And in addition, we also have, if you would like to see like a full range of what we're looking for, I mentioned RFP in the testimony. We can also share the RFP documents as well, and that will give you a really full look at what we're looking for from CMS organizations.
Thank you. Yeah, we would love to see the RFP, and part of the reason why we wanted to see the scope of work is because we really wanted to understand, what are these organizations tasked with doing, and how are they implementing that work, and how that work is being evaluated. And further, we noticed that some of the crisis management organizations may have really great therapeutic services, but perhaps their Credible Messenger program isn't up to par, or maybe they're not, or maybe they don't have sort of scope of work or contracting to provide a suite of services that might be useful for that community, but another crisis management organization is. So, it is our thoughts and our hopes that the work can be standardized, so that there is a model that sort of fits across the board and allow for the flexibility for organizations that might need to tweak things to fit their community, but that there should be like a base level standard. And from some of our anecdotal sort of research, it was hard to sort of put our hand on like a current theme across the many crisis management organizations. But look forward to speaking with you again about this and the bill, and just want to thank the chair again.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Before I get into my line of questioning, we've been joined by Councilmember Arreola. Thank you. So thank you so much. We're just going to kind of go over like the baseline, questioning for the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. So describe the current landscape of the city's crisis management system, and what are the different components and types of services that comprise CMS?
So the crisis management system is 31 catchment sites across the city. Generally speaking, they include Cure Violence, Cure Violence, and Credible Messengers, school conflict mediation, and therapeutic services. There are also a wide range of services that are offered within different catchment areas, depending on the provider that's providing it. And I will turn it over to Deputy Executive Director Osborne to discuss it a little bit more.
Sure. Good morning.
So the crisis management system, good morning. The crisis management system sites each contain the care violence model, therapeutic services, school conflict mediation. All of the sites are also afforded legal aid services for participants or community members that may need it. We also have job set-asides through our anti-gun violence employment program and job readiness through DOP Works Plus.
Thank you so much. What other city agencies are involved in the operations of CMS, and what roles do other agencies serve?
So we work with a broad variety of other agencies, especially when there's other needs that arise. So as Ms. Osborne mentioned, we work with DOP, we work with, we liaise with DOHMH and H&H. There are other agencies that we also work with, and I'll let her add a little bit more color to that.
Sure. So we also work with the NYPD on a high level just to get hotspot information about areas that may need additional attention from our crisis management system partners. We work with the DOE. We work with DOH for our hospital response component. We also have partnerships with ACS and DOC for some of our partners who work in ACS secure and non-secure detention facilities, as well as provide mentorship services on Rikers Island.
Thank you so much. So what is the breakdown of the funding for CMS between MOCJ and the other coordinating agencies?
I do not have a full breakdown of the funding between MOCJ and the other coordinating agencies. Generally speaking, the CMS system is about $75 million.
Okay, $75 million, thank you. Does CMS receive funding from any other city agencies, or non-city resources, I should say?
There directly, we have received federal funding for CMS, both for the evaluation and then also through grants.
When it comes to capacity building and an organization's ability to host a program, a CMS program, what is the contracting process for programs that receive funding through MOCJ? Like, talk me through how that works, how they're identified.
So previously through CMS, we would identify providers from recommendations from the community, from the council member, and and also working with NYPD.
Is there any criteria that a recommended organization that is going to host one of these programs, is there any type of prerequisite that is necessary for them before they, a track record, any?
That is usually what we're looking at, yes.
Okay.
However, as I mentioned, the RFP, there's a whole list of requirements that that organizations will have to meet in order to be selected for through the RFP process.
Okay. So what accounting, record keeping, or data is sharing is required by MOCJ as part of the contract terms with CMS program operators?
So we use a database that allows us to look at the work and to track and monitor what our organizations are doing. I'll let Ms. Osborne talk a little bit more about that database.
Thank you.
Sure. So the database we've implemented for the last year to capture a lot of the work that we've had for our ONS portfolio. So currently we have a partnership with Care4 to collect the data for our care violence programming. And also we've added our therapeutic services and school conflict mediation to that database.
What does MOCJ's role as a contract manager for CMS programs entail? What does that look like?
So currently the contracts are subcontracted through Block Power, and they work with an organization called Promise Pay that works with the CMS providers to get them through the subcontracting process. So essentially it's one-on-one work with getting folks there, helping people to get their scopes, their budgets, and then also to work them through the actual process of submitting those documents and making sure that they have everything that they need.
So what would be some of the challenges that an organization may face when going through that process?
It's sometimes difficult for organizations to develop the appropriate scope of work and to match it to the budget that they want to have.
Yeah. Is there any kind of work that you do, technical support to allow, which is what we want our bill to do, but is there anything that you think that needs to be done to get organizations prepared to do this kind of work through that process?
I think, they currently they get one-on-one help in order to be one-on-one support in order to be able to complete those documents.
Okay. What type of quantitative data is examined when evaluating success?
So when we're looking at success, we're obviously, in order to select the sites, we're looking at levels of gun violence over the last 5 years. And as we're measuring success for programs, that is one of the things that we're also looking at. We're also looking at how they are operating within the community, whether or not they're responding to issues of gun violence, whether or not they are implementing their programs. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking at.
Okay. So as communities and CMS programs approach violence prevention and intervention in different ways, are there efforts to facilitate a collaboration between organization or collective works, a collaborative on developing best practices for improved program effectiveness?
So yes, we are, our providers do have meetings where they come together to try to support one another and share practices across the continuum.
Is there anything official? How many times do they meet? What would be, the briefing as a result of some of those collaboratives? I know that I've seen programs that do some of youth development. They have a collaborative, and that collaborative, helps with technical support. So talk to me a little bit about, they'll drill down a little bit more on the official, is there an official collaborative?
Yes, so a collaborative, well, to be specific, there's meetings where they come together to support one another while they're also receiving training. So that will usually be through Cure Violence Global training is what they're receiving, and working together and sharing any issues that they've had or that they've seen across the system. Okay. For a little bit more information, I'll turn it over to Mr. Carvajal.
Hi. So in regards to additional support and oversight, we have bi-monthly program managers meeting, which Cure Violence Global leads. We also have our own internal staff that have quarterly site visits and weekly check-ins with providers to see areas of support, areas of concerns, and any needs or additional assistance that can be provided to them.
Thank you. Is there specific funding for your technical these collaborative meetings? Do you think that there's a need to have a separate space for that?
So the funding is included in
Included
in our budget.
Thank you. Can you speak to some situations that have proven particularly challenging? Are there some issues that violence interrupters face within their course of work? And can you describe the role of CMS during a hospital response? What are some of the barriers?
As we know, the work is quite challenging. The credible messengers are in situations that are sometimes very fraught, and they're looking to interrupt cycles of violence. So we do know that their work is very, it's very intense, and it can be very demanding. I will turn it over to Kena to talk a little bit more about hospital response.
Sure. So one of the issues that come up or challenges that come up with the hospital response program is identifying space within the hospital for the CBO partners to operate and set up shop when they are scheduled to be there, just because space in the hospital is very limited. So that's one of the challenges that we always come up with. And then another one that they usually present is parking. For them to be able to be on call at the hospital when violent traumas come in, to be able to park their vehicles to get there in a fast capacity.
Thank you so much. And my last question before I pass it along to my colleagues, does MOCJ track long-term outcomes for youth in areas served by CMS, such as the data on educational attainment or future employment rates?
I don't think we track that independently as a part of this specific evaluation, but it is definitely something we look at as we're looking at general needs of an area, or how, and then it is also a topic for, definitely for long-term evaluation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that ends my questioning. Before I pass it along to my colleagues, Councilmember Stevens, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Mealy and Councilmember Rita Joseph.
Hi, good morning, super early. Just one of the first questions I have is, can you tell us how much you've received from federal funding and how much is committed to FY 2023?
I can get you that total amount.
Yes.
I don't have it on me at this time.
So you guys don't know how much you received overall or in the past?
We do have it in our records. I just don't have it currently at this time, but we can get it to you as quickly as possible.
Thank you. One of the things that I've heard from providers express concerns about is like often they feel like the contracts are piecemeal. So as you guys stated, you have like the hospitals, you have the school, and then you have the incredible messengers. And one of the issues they've said is that cure violence is a holistic approach and they should really be having the whole contract and not pieces. So could you talk to me a little bit about like why contracts are set up that way when, you know, they feel like one provider should be doing those services holistically?
I think it really depends on what the needs are for that area. Sometimes they are a bit piecemeal, but also oftentimes people don't have that specific expertise. And so it makes more sense to subcontract in order to work with another provider to provide that service.
And so even thinking about you saying that they don't have the capacity, so then what supports are MOCJ giving to ensure that they are building those capacities so that we can get to a place that they can do that work? Because I think it's hard when you have different folks coming into families who've been traumatized and having less contact, and we know that that works. Having less contact is what should be happening, and having one provider and having them see the whole thing through typically makes the most sense. So I think it's really important for us to think about how are we moving in that direction.
Okay, I definitely think continuity of services is something that we can discuss and make sure that we're building that capacity within organizations. Over the past few years, the CMS system has been, we've added significant amounts of funding to it, and part of that has been to help organizations to build their capacity. We do see the need for helping people along and to ensuring that they have what they need to thrive, and that's something that we're continuing to explore.
And could you talk about, when you say you're exploring, could you give a little bit more detail about what that actually looks like?
Sure. So previously we had a workshop that was done in conjunction with the law firm Cleary, and we are working with them based on feedback from our providers to see what might be more helpful, or might be even more helpful to build on that success for the next workshop. In addition, we're also exploring other ways to provide additional capacity building.
Can you talk about what that exploring looks like? I'm sorry.
It would look like helping people to, through nonprofit management, through legal assistance, a lot of the things that that Chair Hanks' bill references. So we're looking at improving nonprofit management, improving the ability to contract with the city, improving their accounting controls, that kind of thing.
What coordination does MOCJ help with other city agencies and CMS sites, particularly NYPD, because that was another challenge that a lot of the CMS sites say that they have, where they are not giving in information from NYPD, and so it also creates a struggle and a boundary. And also even with some of the other sites where it's like even with victim services and things like that, that they don't have the access in that way. So how are you guys coordinating those partnerships and making sure that there's transparency between all the city agencies?
So we work very closely, victim services is within our office as well. So we work very closely with that portfolio in order to provide services that people need, and with our contracted provider, one of which is Safe Horizon, in order to do that. In terms of coordinating with NYPD, we do try—
I'm sorry, but could you talk a little bit about what that looks like and not just saying coordination? Because
Sure.
What does that coordination actually look like?
When we hear from CMS providers that there's a need, that need goes to the ONS team, and the ONS team reaches out to either OCVS, we're currently staffing OCVS, but to Safe Horizon to get that person connected to the services that they need.
So do they have like monthly check-ins? Is there shared goals? Are they working on things together? Like, are we ensuring that they're in the room consistently and not only when an issue arises?
So usually victim services is, when there is a victim, and so it's sort of like individualized. However, we always see more need for improving our systems, and so if we're seeing an issue consistently come up, that is something that we would try to address. And I would love to talk to you more about things that you're seeing and if you're seeing gaps in that.
This is feedback that I'm getting from the providers of some of the things that they're seeing. And could you talk a little bit about what does the coordination look like in the YPD? Because I'm hearing that there's a lot of struggle there and they're not able to get the information sometimes that they need to be shared. So I'm hearing that they're sharing information, but NYPD is not necessarily sharing information. Obviously, there are legal restraints around some things, but I think that coordination is important and that's where we should be moving.
We absolutely agree that coordination is important. And if you're seeing, each precinct is different, and so each precinct tends to have a different relationship with each provider. And so we do consistently work to make sure that relationship is good, but if there's an issue that you're seeing or that our providers are seeing, that is something that we try to work on that individualized basis.
I have a couple more questions, I'm sorry. Can you talk to me a little bit about how catchment areas are determined? Because that's another issue that I'm hearing, whereas like providers have these very screwed catchment areas, and so we often know that beef, they don't have catchment areas. And so could we talk about that and that process and how does that determine and how do we, how often is that evaluated? How does it change? What does this look like a little bit?
So the catchment areas were determined by the persistence of gun violence over 5 years prior to the selection of the catchment area. And we are consistently looking at catchment areas and areas in the
I'm sorry, you said it was looked at over 5 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Like the average of shootings over the last 5 years. And so that's how the sites were selected. We do continue to evaluate how gun violence and how shootings are evolving in that area, or the rate of those shootings are evolving in different areas. And so it's something we are consistently looking at.
Yeah, because I think it's just a little bit strange, right? If you're just looking at where the shootings are taking place, because we should be looking at where beef is arising and those things. And so I think even the determination of catchment areas is a little bit skewed because it's not allowing for us to look at it from a city perspective, because often, and I'll take the Bronx for example, there's folks who might be beefing in the Millbrook houses, and they might be beefing with RPT. And if you have a catchment area, you can't. The cross collaboration doesn't work. And so I think we should really be thinking about how are we moving forward and really evaluating this in a different way.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And then I guess my last question, because I'm taking up too much space. A RFP apparently has been open in my district for a while, in District 16, and apparently it's been pushed back several times. So for the last 2 years, this has not been done. So could you talk to me like what's taking so long with the RFP process, and when could we expect for this to be done?
Sure. So we had a large response to the RFP, and also we are looking to, this RFP was a very, we designed it very specifically for this system because it is supposed to be so community-based. So we wanted to have a lot of input across the community. And because of that, the RFP has taken a little bit of time, but it was largely because we had such a large response. But we are looking to, it is nearly complete, and we will be announcing awards in the spring of this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of becomes redundant, right? If we're saying that we see an uptick in violence here, and that's why we did the RFP, then taking 2 years. So 2 years of no services in an area that is needed does not make sense. And so we really have to do better. And so I understand that we do want to make sure that we're picking the right provider. And I'm not saying that we should skip on that, but I think that we need to be thinking about how do we make sure that we're expediting these processes, especially when money has been designated and has been sitting here for 2 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Great questions. I will call on the public advocate to ask his questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for the testimony. And as I mentioned before, I'm just so proud of where this is now. But I also know that even when we got the model originally from Chicago, I always say New Yorkized it. We changed it a little bit because it wasn't a one-for-one, and I think it's okay for it to adapt even further as we are moving forward. And I always, as I mentioned, the intent was to make sure there was evaluation in a way that I haven't seen happening, and I think it is imperative as I mentioned, violence is going up all across this country. Where actually New York City, even in comparison to other places, are quote unquote still safer. That means nothing to the people who are actually being harmed and traumatized, and so we have to make sure we lift that up as well, and I think the city can really show some leadership here. I did have a question about, have you looked at data now? Like, how is the program doing right now, even as the crime is going up in the areas where they are, particularly the gun violence?
So each catchment area is different, and we can definitely get the data on the specific catchment areas, but there have been catchment areas where we've seen a recent decrease in shootings, for sure.
Thank you, and I agree, we may want to look at how the catchment areas interact, because I know, I think it was a 10 by 10 block radius, if I'm not correct, but that model of where we had it just may not work the way it was before, and it can adapt. I did want to know, I do think this program needs to be expanded, and we definitely need additional funding. I also know that's not the end-all and be-all, and so I know a lot of folks now, as soon as they're trying to work on gun violence, they feel they have to have a site to do that. How are you helping other kinds of services that are not necessarily CMS get funded and be connected to this work?
So the CMS works, it works across a broad range of services, including school conflict mediation, as well as the therapeutic services. In addition to that, we also have our MAP program, which it's localized within NYCHA, but it is designed to allow communities to both define safety for themselves and also to improve the aspects of the physical environment and also the services that we know promote safety. And we also have the program Atlas, which seeks to provide, which provides services to people who are most at risk of being involved in gun violence.
And I do know, just to reiterate, I believe what Councilmember Stevens was getting at, getting money out the door to these groups have been tremendously problematic for quite some time. Is there something we're working on to try to get the money out the door to these groups in a quicker pace?
That is something that we have identified as an issue, and it is something that we have worked very hard on this year, and I think that we've been able to make significant improvements on that this year. We were able to issue advances to the organizations, pretty much immediately when their contracts, as soon as the contract was registered this year. The contract was registered by July 1. Organizations were allowed to get advances, and they have been invoicing since then.
All right, I think it would be great to find out or get better information of what is actually holding it up, and if it's just the way contracts are handed out in the city. We just have to find, I've always been a proponent that we have to find a way to streamline some contracts even more than others, and I think this is definitely one of them. I also want to just put on the record, and you can respond or not, there was a city article that came up about a program called Advanced Peace. That program, we actually changed as well, same way we did with this. It was actually going to be a hyper-mentorship model focused on the people who were most likely to be shooters. And it was unfortunate because that program was announced in March of last year, and the money never got to the organization, CCD in Queens. The report actually was erroneous. It made it seem as if the money had gotten there. And it's frustrating because it was set up the same way that this was. We wanted to pilot it to see if it worked. If it didn't work, it didn't. If it did, you keep it going. That didn't happen. That also got conflated with the Advanced Peace Organization, which came from Oakland, and they apparently are working on something else themselves that didn't fall through. But I just want to make sure we put on the record that this money never got to the organization. And this was a great time to actually be trying to see if that worked. They set up infrastructures. They met with actually the DAs so they can help identify the people they should most focus on. And then they were told to begin the work. They actually may have to begin letting some folks go, and they may have to start closing down offices that were opened up. This is the type of program I think we should be investing in, and we should be seeing if it works or it doesn't. But I want to make clear on the record that for that report that was put out, the funding never got to the groups. And my hope is that we, in November of this year or December, we can hopefully get that funding there, because it's an important overlay, I believe, for the type of work that we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Public Advocate. Councilmember Bottcher, do you have questions?
Thank you so much. So the Cure Violence programs are currently in 21 precincts, is that correct?
We have 31 catchment areas.
31 catchment areas, but 21 precincts, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And how many precincts are there total in New York City?
77.
77. These programs are effective in bringing down gun violence, in your opinion?
We believe that the programs are effective in helping to alleviate gun violence, yes.
Why are they only in 21 out of 77 precincts if, in the Adams administration's opinion, they're effective at bringing down gun violence? Presumably, we have problems with gun violence in more than the 21 precincts, right?
So these precincts were selected as the ones that have the highest levels of gun violence over the past 5 years before they were selected.
Are there plans to expand them to other precincts?
That's definitely something that we should evaluate and see if there's a need for the program in other districts.
Are there plans to do that evaluation between now and the budget adoption in June?
So it's something that we're consistently looking at. Right now we have an RFP out for the sites that have currently been selected, but it's definitely something that we can continue to discuss.
I'm looking at a series of evaluations by John Jay College of Criminal Justice, which found these programs to be effective and evaluated precincts that had these programs against those that didn't have these programs. But why is it that John Jay College of Criminal Justice is doing these studies and not the Adams administration? Why isn't the city publishing this data?
So we continue to monitor the programs and to make sure that they are fulfilling the requirements of their contracts, but John Jay evaluates them because we want our evaluations to be independent. We want them to be done by someone who's not conducting the work.
Does the administration publish the evaluations that you conduct publicly?
So we don't publish the monitoring that we do of the organizations, but it's definitely something that we can have a conversation about.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Holden, and then Councilmember Ariola.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your testimony. Just in understanding where violence is coming from, do you have a number of how many acts of violence are from gang members or gangs in general?
I don't think I have that number.
That's an important, wouldn't that be important to if you're going to address violence, to know where it's coming from?
So within the catchment areas that we work with, we do work with NYPD to determine which places are the best for folks to be deployed or where the needs are. So that's usually how the program works. We don't necessarily monitor specifically gang violence throughout the city.
Well,
But
I mean,
it's something that we
it's
can-
kind of common sense, though. If I would think a gang would be a tougher haul to really kind of to break through to than just random violence. So you really have to understand, what you're dealing with, because it might be quite dangerous to deal with and try to get through to a gang, because they're protecting one another, and you would need that data, and you would need to really understand before you address it, before you send a group in, before you think that you'll make an impact, to know who you're dealing with. And so you don't keep that data. The NYPD doesn't provide that, or?
So we work very closely with NYPD to have that information within the specific catchment areas that we have, where we have providers.
Yeah, but I just, again, to me, if you're dealing with the situation, you should give me a number like 50%, 30% in certain neighborhoods are gang related, because that's I think a tougher haul. It just, to me, again, I'm not an expert on this. You are, but we would need the data on what type of violence is happening in a certain area to deal with it, and to deal with it effectively. Otherwise, we're putting people in harm's way.
Agreed, and we work very closely with NYPD within the catchment area. I was answering the question regarding citywide, But within the catchment area, we do work with NYPD to get that
So
information.
you know if it's
within the catchment.
gang-related, you take a different approach, or the providers take a different approach?
Yes, for sure. So a lot of it's a more complicated question, but yes and yes.
All right.
The approaches are specific to the situation that they're.
And it does say in our committee report that 82% of all incidents were confined to 40 precincts, and we're addressing half of that, kind of, right, with this 21?
Thereabouts.
Yeah, so it looks like this has to be expanded. I mean, that would make sense, but, all right, thank you for your testimony. Thanks.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Holden. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Caban, and Councilmember Ariola has questions.
Thank you, Chair. These are questions for the providers and the advocates. Can you provide examples of some success stories for either individuals or communities? Can you speak to some of the situations that have proven particularly challenging? Who's gonna grab that? Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I will turn it over to Mr. Carvajal to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Council Member. So in regards to success stories, we have many. You know, through our anti-gun violence employment program, we help employ youth across the city throughout the year, you know, to get accessibility, mentorship, and other types of resources. Through that program, we're able to provide youth with a safe space to be in, an alternative to, you know, violence that's happening in the community. We also have many other success stories throughout the city where our credible messengers and our violence interrupters actually mediate and de-escalate situations anywhere from domestic violence to gang violence, and to make a note to what the former council member was stating regarding gang interventions. There are many inroads that our credible messengers have in regards to gangs across the city. This is something that is very critical to their work, where they can actually influence and de-escalate situations. So when we're talking about crime, whether it's index crime or shooting analytics or whatever, you know, we need to tell a full story as how our programs and our providers are helping prevent crimes from happening that often go unreported, right? So when we talk about a shooting that takes place very public, but what about all of the situations where our credible messengers actually prevented violence from happening in the community? And there are dozens and hundreds of stories that we can actually share with you all individually regarding, you know, your precincts or your districts, and, you know, what have the providers done in those areas.
Thank you. And to what extent is the NYPD aware of your day-to-day work, you know, as a CMS program? Just to piggyback on what you talked about, you know, gang members that you're positively influencing to stop gang violence. How important is the gang database for you to really identify gangs, identify those who are members of gangs, so that you can infiltrate and you can possibly intervene with your skilled professionals?
So our work with the NYPD is not, we don't work with them related to specifically to the gang database. We work with them rather on identifying hotspots and identifying issues that they're seeing on the ground.
I think that kind of leaves you going in cold. I would worry about you if you were my son. I worry about you and you're not. Has there been cooperations with the local precincts to improve operations with CMS? Are you finding that there is a good working relationship with our local precincts?
I'll turn that over to Mr. Carvajal.
Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. So we actually have weekly conversations and check-ins with NYPD Crime Analytics at a leadership level, where they'll tell us and they'll notify us of, one, either concerns that they have across the city of potential shootings or potential rivalries or beefs amongst gangs. They'll also notify us of recent shootings or violence that have taken place, where that'll inform the weekend deployment that we have with our crisis management system across the city, and areas of concern where they need to deploy staff either through the later evening hours or specific hotspot locations where they can intervene and have a presence to de-escalate or prevent violent situations from happening. So we do that on a weekly basis. That information comes from our office to the crisis management providers across the city, and it informs the work that they do on a week-to-week basis.
Okay. So, so Councilmember Holden mentioned that there are 21 precincts that you're working in now. There are 40 plus, I think he said, that are identified as needing this type of intervention. So how many crisis management CBOs does MOXJ work with currently and have oversight of?
I would say across the whole system, roughly 50 to 60.
50. And what is the current number of employees with MOXJ that does the oversight? What is the amount of budgeted people to do this oversight of the 50 CBOs?
The budgeted number I could not tell you, but I will let Kena answer on the number of staff members.
So currently, there are 10 staff on ONS.
And how often do they have contact with the CBOs for oversight?
On a daily basis.
On a daily basis. I just have one final question, only because I think it's important. You do also go into hospitals where, you know, there's been incidences. How are you navigating the different COVID protocols that each hospital may have when you arrive?
So for each CBO, they all went through the process with their individual hospital and what protocols are in place, so they're aware of what they can and can't do.
Good. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time and your answers.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Caban, you have questioning.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the folks testifying today. Want to hit a couple of different buckets, but I do want to build on what Councilmember Bottcher said earlier in terms of expansion and the public advocate in terms of funding. You know, we see in the report that yes, crisis management programs are reducing gun violence in areas, but I think it's worth pointing out that we still have not invested to the size and scale of our problem. While we're seeing 30–40% reductions in gun violence, there are models across the country and even in previous years where we saw more concentrated investment here where you can get results of up to 75–80% reductions in gun violence. And it is a problem that we ask these groups to save lives and do a lot with a little, and then ask them to expand their catchment areas or move into other parts of the neighborhood, but give them a fraction of the resources they do, and then their results are diluted. And so we are not doing, you know, this successful strategy. It's full service. So I just want to state that we need to get money out to these groups quicker, but we also need to give them a lot more money and resources. I did want to ask you about sort of MOXJ's ability to be able to follow up with, be in compliance with some of this legislation that's being proposed. I do have some concerns, you know, through budget hearings and multiple prior hearings. We have seen that MOXJ has experienced quite a few vacancies. I'd love to know where you are at with filling those. In addition to that, I'm concerned about the ability in the operations. You know, we saw coming out of the Renewable Rikers Act that there was an MOA for lots of millions and millions and millions of dollars that were supposed to go out to restorative justice groups and programming. And for a while, that money, it has not been spent or executed. That money appeared to be lost. The folks that were supposed to convene on how it was supposed to get spent, but identifying somebody who was going to sort of hold those funds in trust and execute them. None of those things happened on the timeline that they were supposed to. So I have real concerns about MOXJ's ability to do the things that are laid out here. So if y'all could speak to that quickly, and then I have just one more additional question after that.
Sure. So we're continuing to work on the restorative justice programming, and we do anticipate implementing it later on this year. And we'll definitely keep you looped on how that is happening.
Well, what happened with the fiscal year has passed. What happened to those millions and millions of dollars that didn't get spent?
There was a delay in getting things off the ground, and we had some difficulty getting off the ground.
That's a real problem, and it's not very encouraging. Where do you stand with vacancies and filling those, and having the office have the capacity it needs to execute its functions?
So we're consistently working on filling our vacancies. We've got a few vacancies now. If you, we can send those over to you if you know of anybody who would be great for those roles.
Thank you. My last question is for the providers. There was mention of the gang database, and you know, in my experience, not just as a young brown woman who was raised in a community that was heavily over-policed, but also as a public defender, I have seen that this gang database be a catch-all and a dragnet of Black and brown, predominantly young men in neighborhoods, thrown on a database for wearing the wrong colors, for living in the same projects, for living, being standing out in a park with somebody, and then seeing that list be leveraged to forward prosecutions, right? Getting young teenagers to testify against other kids, to make other cases, to throw them into jail, so on and so forth. But what I've also seen from the providers is that while the gang database has served to be this really awful racist dragnet, that y'all have built the kinds of relationships in the community to actually more accurately identify who is, a member of a gang, what has compelled them to be a part of a gang, and build relationships and sort of like move people away from different kinds of activities and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you do in relationship to gang activity in neighborhoods? As well as I just also want to point out, I think that the relationship between the CMS groups and the police is also delicate, and I think you could speak to that too, because depending on the flow of information, y'all's lives get put in danger if the police are a little bit too heavy-handed or demand certain kinds of communications, because not only do you lose your ability to be a credible messenger, but then there's the step further with a fear of being looked at as a snitch. So it's a necessary relationship, but it's also a very delicate balance that I think y'all are best situated to kind of lay out what those relationships need to look like. Sorry, that was a lot.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Caban. So definitely hear you on a lot of concerns regarding credibility and confidentiality. We actually had this conversation with our CMS provider on Wednesday during our bi-monthly program managers meeting, leadership meeting, and we don't share names or confidential information. We do help inform the work that the CMS providers do on the ground to better engage, intervene, and de-escalate situations from happening, and we are in the mindset of providing opportunities to our Black and brown communities, whether they're gang involved or not gang involved. We want to make sure that every individual that has some type of negative interaction in community, that we have some type of support for them, and every person that is arrested is a person that we have failed, and we need to provide more support for, because that's one individual that represents a family, that represents a whole host of community members that need additional support. And when we're talking about crime, we're talking about violence in community, there are very deep root causes that stem in our Black and brown communities, poverty being one of those. So being able to provide a safe space and haven for our youth that oftentimes have the highest rates of incarceration, as you might know, where they might just need, a mentor, someone that can walk them to school. They might just need a space where they can speak to someone or have access to food. So in our work with our credible messengers, when we're identifying common issues that are happening on the ground and what supports or services we can improve or we can bring to the table to these communities to make government, one, more effective, but also in partnership and co-developing what is the localized strategy to address crime that's happening in these communities. And we can go on specific examples, but those are just very top lines, in response to your statement.
I just want to thank you for your work and your holistic approach to reducing violence in your communities. We're really deeply, deeply appreciated.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember De La Rosa, you have questions?
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here and testifying. I have a few questions around the catchment areas. So as of right now, do we have the information, is it public information where the catchment areas are?
So we can provide the information where the catchment areas are, and it's not something that we publish, but it's available to anyone who would like to have it.
Okay. I think that it is important to have some transparency around that, because I think at least for me, and I don't want to talk for all of my colleagues, I represent Upper Manhattan, Washington Heights, and my community is a community that is a high gun violence community. We have a lot going on up there, and I've been having the conversations on the ground with groups that exist in my community, that there's trust in my community, to try to see how we get some cure violence groups going and supported in my community. But the infrastructure has never existed, and so it's difficult, right, to build trust and also build the infrastructure at the same time, because it would be easy to bring like a group that is operating in Harlem, for example, that is a neighboring community, up to my district, but the trust wouldn't be there, right? We'd have to establish that trust. And so one of my direct questions is, are there any areas in New York City that are experiencing high rates of gun violence that could benefit from further expansion of the CMS? And I understand there's a resource question, so that's important. But have you all sort of taken inventory of other areas that may need expansion?
So it's something that we are consistently looking at where gun violence is happening across the city. It's a longer conversation about bringing in the CMS groups or bringing in the model, just because it depends on the kind of violence that's happening, if there's like an available provider, and then also resources. But it's something that we are consistently looking at.
And is there technical support for a district like mine where I have no infrastructure, and the infrastructure should have been there in the 90s when we were at the crosshairs on the war of drugs, right? But it never came about, and now we're in a situation where the gun violence has increased to some extent in certain areas, and we don't have the ability to sort of interrupt that violence through community-driven solutions. So does MOCJ have any supports for that type of work?
It's definitely something we can talk about. We have definitely worked with council members and community members and the NYPD and other and organizations to see what we can do in situations like that when there's not a specific provider or a catchment area identified.
Yeah, because I feel like one of the challenges here is that we have discretionary funding. We're able to channel discretionary funding in our district, but not all youth services providers are necessarily equipped to deal with the type of issues that we're talking about when it comes to gun violence. So, the children that are walking into an after-school program are not necessarily the same children that, need that intervention on the ground. And so I feel like more needs to be done in terms of helping to equip our community to know how to respond to the violence that we're seeing.
Okay, that's definitely something that we should discuss. If there's something, obviously you're talking about situations that you're seeing in your district and that you're seeing in community. So we should definitely discuss next steps and how it might be able to be helpful.
I look forward to reaching out to you offline. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember De La Rosa. I have questions for Councilmember Joseph and then Councilmember Mealy.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My question is around data. And earlier, your catchment, are you utilizing data to allow your target approaches to prevent violence? Are you using data for preventative measures as well?
To a certain extent. I will turn it over to Mr. Carvajal to talk a little bit about our coordination with the NYPD and the data we receive from them.
Thank you. So in regards to crime data, we receive index crime on a weekly basis. We also have weekly conversations with NYPD on hotspots or ongoing crime or recent shootings within our catchments, within the precincts that we provide services, and a localized response. We also coordinate with NYPD and other community groups where there's additional supports needed. So I'll give an example of the South Bronx where a town hall was held, and this was in partnership and led with our CMS providers, our resident stakeholders, both in Patterson houses and Mitchell houses, and NYPD from PSA 7 and the 40th Precinct. There's also localized strategies on ongoing support and inroads that can be done to address safety issues or identified crime concerns in these precincts. So we do receive data on a weekly basis. We do work with NYPD and coordinate on recent shootings or homicides or other safety concerns.
Do you use that data to constantly adjust how you use your programming to prevent? And how is your data being used once you receive it? How are you using it?
That's a great question. So we have ongoing, so our canvassing hours, our violence interrupters and outreach workers are out there on a weekly basis. What the crime data informs is where there are specific areas of concern where we need to pivot or have more of a focused strategies. In those specific areas, we can take an example of like Millbrook houses or Mitchell houses where they might have beef, or Van Dyke houses or Brownsville houses in Brownsville, where there might be a recent shooting, or NYPD might inform us of some type of gang activity and concerns that they have on incoming or upcoming potential shootings between rival gangs, and that will help determine how our deployment and how our CMS providers deploy staff for that week. There's a standardized as far as their catchments and canvassing and office hours, but the data on a week-to-week basis or recent shootings or crimes does inform and pivot our programming and our resources to address those immediate concerns.
Are you working with other city agencies such as DYCD, HRA, the DA to support pathways and resources that help prevent violence before it happens?
So we do have several programs that provide youth employment or mental health support, mentorship through the Office of Neighborhood Safety. While this conversation is focused on the crisis management system, we do have several other programs that can provide additional resources and supports, one to our CMS providers, but also to the larger communities that they're in and that they service. So we do this through Atlas and also through the Neighborhood Staff Program under the Mayor's Action Plan for Neighborhood Safety, so yes.
Thank you. Also, we know that data from NYPD and other law enforcement agencies always show that youth violence always starts in schools and social settings. Are you supporting organizations that reach into communities to engage young people before they decide to join any gangs or gang affiliations?
So we have a school conflict mediation program where we're in 95 schools across the city, and we also, the Department of Education recently launched the Pivot program, which provides additional funding and programming for conflict mediation, crisis management, assistance and support in those schools. Within these programs, our providers are able to engage young people. They also have safe passages for youth in these schools. Oftentimes, not oftentimes, but when we do get alerts from NYPD on potential safety concerns at specific schools, it helps inform our deployment, and we pivot resources to my previous point on, having a presence and being able to be physically there to de-escalate and prevent a violent situation from happening.
How soon, once you get the data, you're able to quickly turn around and respond to that?
So we have formal meetings on Thursdays every week, and those go out immediately, either that day or early Friday morning, and that informs what's happening very, very quickly. If there are other concerns that happen throughout the week, either through community members, local partners, or NYPD, we also have those conversations through our check-ins with our providers, or just simply alerting them of a situation so that they can respond accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
guess I have to say something. You didn't name 3 of my developments. Are there places where the programs have been more successful than others?
So organizations sometimes are at different levels in their development. So sometimes when we see that people have had less experience, but they tend to get better over time.
Then what do? Do you send that program somewhere else, or you learn from it and then start implementing the program, the same thing in which help them other places?
So basically, we try to work with them to help them to develop the expertise that they need in order to work within their specific community. But I'll turn it over to Rodney Orkana to talk a little bit more.
But before he goes,
sorry.
How many programs right now that do not have an catchment area, that no one is working at a catchment area that is there, but no one is really assigned to it?
I think we have one catchment area that nobody's assigned to.
Isn't that my district?
No, it's the 88th precinct.
I have the 67th and the 77th, in which I wrote a letter. I have 2 cure violence programs. They trying to say this is my area. Another one saying, no, it's my area. I wrote your organization a letter, and I still have not gotten anything in regards to that. That's an area that is still Linden Boulevard.
Okay. We can definitely discuss that and try to figure out a solution there. I don't think that we were aware of the situation.
No, I wrote,
so
I spoke to you.
I apologize if there was some miscommunication, but we will absolutely
We
speak with
really
you
need
about
to
it.
know who is manning that area, and it's okay because 2 organizations came at one time. When Kay Lewin passed away, the 12-year-old, we had almost 3 cure violence programs there, but it's no Pacific program there. So please, as soon as possible, let's rectify that. And how does the administration plan to address longstanding issues regarding delays of the payments for the CMS providers?
So,
do you have a plan B?
So we worked really hard this year to expedite their payments. At the very beginning of the year, that all the organizations received several advances in order to be able to start their work without invoicing. And now they should be in a place where they can invoice and they can get paid on a regular basis.
I did hear you say that. How many of the programs took the cash advancement or was even aware of it? Because some of the programs are not really aware or know how to do the cash advancement. How do you let them know they can get a cash advance?
So we're currently working with most of our providers are under a subcontract with Block Power, and Block Power works with them and has let everyone know that there is an advance available.
So how many of these programs use the advance?
All of them received an advance.
All of them?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay, how regularly are the programs evaluated?
So we're consistently monitoring the programs. We speak with the programs on a daily basis, and they also use the database CARE4 to ensure that we're keeping track of the work that they're doing.
Excuse me, say that again, I'm sorry.
So it's through a combination of monitoring, is in like talking to the programs and also meeting with them and visiting sites, as well as using the database CARE4 to monitor the work that they're doing.
So if you see a program that is not keeping up to its standards, what is the recourse on that?
So we try to work with that program to find out what the issues are, what's causing the issue, and how we can work with them to remedy it.
Have you ever had a program needed that service?
Yes, we've had programs we've had to work with more closely.
What is the outcome of it?
Usually we see an improvement, usually.
Usually? Have any of the programs ever, you felt that the funding should be taken away?
We have had programs that have either reduced their catchment area or we're no longer working with them.
Okay, so I keep writing to keep up with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mealy. So I have one follow-up question that, before we get into the public testimony, should my colleagues be finished with their line of questioning. So Mok-Jay testified, or you testified that, the total CMS funding was $70 million. This is a huge drop from prior publicly announced funding levels. So can you talk about the funding levels from 2019 to 2020 to 2021 to...
So the program's funding has significantly increased over the past few years. When we talk about the programming, usually with the council, we're talking about all the anti-gun violence programming. So all the anti-gun violence programming is about $139 million.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Caban, do you have any further follow-up questions before we get into the public testimony? Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. So
Thank you, Chair Hanks and members of the committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're now going to turn to the public section of the hearing. We're going to start with We're going to start with two individuals who are on Zoom, Penn and Perry, who represent a cure violence program out of Staten Island, True to Life. So I'll let you all kind of start, and then we'll turn to a panel of folks in the room. So we're going to give 3 minutes to testify, and the council members could ask any questions. So I'll let you gentlemen just introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about your program. Go ahead.
Starting time.
Yes, peace, everyone. Good morning, if we're still in the morning. Now, it was a lot said. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mike Perry. I am the leader of the CMS site on Staten Island, True to Life. First and foremost, I definitely need more than 3 minutes, but I'm gonna hold it to 3. Thank you, Councilwoman Hanks, for the opportunity. Thank you, Jumani, for being a champion for us CMS sites. Thank you, Councilmember Williams. I want to definitely, I know he's not in the room, but I definitely want to thank Kay Bain for also being one of the pioneers, Erica A.T., to allow us to do what we do here in New York City. I also want to thank our executive director at Century Family Life Center, Demetrius Carolina, for allowing me to lead, and my partner, the former supervisor, Malcolm, who's on the line, to lead True to Life to the successes that I'm about to speak of. First and foremost, we are approaching 365 days in our target area without a homicide. Also, another target area we have in Mariners Harbor, we are approaching 1,000 days without someone being shot. So I know a couple of things were said about the numbers, and so these numbers are accurate. It takes a lot to do this work and to reach those goals and numbers. So when you talk about the successes, I mean, I think it's clear that the model works, right, when it's done correctly. So I just wanted to speak on that really quick as far as what the numbers look like. The second thing I wanted to speak on was the precincts. I know a couple of the council, a couple of the questions were regarding the precincts and what goes on. So the precincts don't cover all of these these neighborhoods that are plagued by gun violence. On Staten Island, we have the 120 precinct, but we work those grounds over there, but it doesn't cover the 5 or 6 neighborhoods in total in the 120 precinct. So when we're talking about advocating for more programs, more funding, and more boots on the grounds, we need to look at that. Because you may see the 120 and 120 precinct, yeah, there's a cure violence site that covers those areas. It doesn't cover those full neighborhoods, right? I'm born and raised in Staten Island. There's 5 or 6 neighborhoods on the North Shore that is plagued by gun violence. The 120, we only work in about maybe 2.5 of those target areas. You have another 2.5 to 3 that is not touched, and those numbers are up in shootings. And when you look at the numbers that I just mentioned, so it's clear if we are in these other spaces doing the work, we can see 1,000 days with no shootings. We can see 365 days with no shootings. Also want to say what's up to and peace to Rodney and Kana for being at MOCJ. ONS, thank you guys for all that you're doing. Also, the Advanced Peace model was promised to Staten Island. And we were looking at possibly that violence prevention program. And I think that definitely needs to be relooked at. Because it allows us to do more work on Staten Island, to cover more ground, to bring shootings down, to hire people, and to really change the trajectory on Staten Island as we've done as the leaders of the CMS site on Staten Island.
Time has expired.
That's time?
Continue.
That's time.
Oh, okay, thank you. Also, again, just being able to advocate, looking at the numbers, looking at what we've came to already so far with these historical numbers. We also have a record of 1,065 days without a homicide in the Stapleton Park Hill area. Now, when you look at these target areas, we don't even cover the whole Stapleton and the whole Park Hill. Like Jumani mentioned, there's a 10 to 14 block radius. We don't cover the whole thing. So we really need to push funding, more possible anti-violence initiatives such as Advanced Peace and things of that nature, so we can look at really bringing these numbers down in this crime. Also, the last thing that I want to say is I want to advocate now, here and now, as I always do, for higher wages for CMS staff who are on the grounds, boots on the grounds, risking their lives day in and day out to help this city be a safer place. Thank you, Camilla. I appreciate you. I know you hear me, and I know you're riding for Staten Island. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do have one follow-up question. When it comes to, and we've discussed this often, capacity building, Staten Island only has one True to Life or Cure Violence program. Talk to me about some of what your organization would need by the way of capacity building training in order to expand your footprint on Staten Island?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I have my own organization, me and my brother who's on the line, Pen and Perry Inc.
Could I speak on that?
You got it. You got it.
So, like City Councilwoman Camilla Hanks, thanks for asking that question. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. So there is one site on Staten Island. It's Staten Island is just like known as a one-shot pony. There's just one of everything out here. And as Mike discussed, the gun violence reaches all across the North Shore of Staten Island. Pen and Perry Inc. was just an extra component to help deal with all of these issues on Staten Island, surrounded around gun violence. As a violence interrupter for the last 10 years or so, that catchment area that Mike Perry was talking about with over 1,000 plus days, that's my catchment area. I've noticed that through the years, we've been doing a lot of work outside of our work scope, dealing with therapeutic healing, therapeutic services with individuals, and just so much on our workload with True to Life. There wasn't enough time, there wasn't enough staff to actually continue to help service this whole North Shore. So we formed Pen and Perry Inc. to actually be an extra extended hand to help service our people here on Staten Island. Right. And we were looking forward to doing the Advance piece out here because it's needed. True to Life is only one program out here and it covers the entire Staten Island. There was just a shooting on the South Shore, True to Life was there, right? But True to Life is just one program. And like Mike Perry said, I think we need to look at more funding for Pen and Perry Inc. and other programs to do the work out here.
Thank you so much, Malcolm and Mike. Thank you for all the work that you do. And Shaolin, thank you very much. So before I get to the next line of questioning, I just want to recognize the School of New York Times is here to join us. Thank you very much. Give them a hand. I hope you enjoy our hearing. So to take it away, Josh.
Thank you all for your testimony. Next, we're going to hear from a panel of public defenders. So we're going to hear from Brooklyn Defender Services, Jackie Gostigan, and Rosalind Morrison from the Legal Aid Society. We'll start with you two, and then we'll move on to other individuals. Thank you.
Time has started.
We good to start? Okay.
Yes, you may.
Good morning. My name is Jackie Gazdigian. I am Senior Policy Counsel with Brooklyn Defender Services, and I have been a public defender for 13 years. Thank you to the Council, Chair Hanks, and the members of the Committee on the Public Safety for the opportunity to present testimony today. I want to start off by saying that Brooklyn Defender Services commends this council for recognizing the importance of community investment and crisis management as part of a solution to end violence. We call on the city to increase funding for community centers, high quality and engaging programming and organizations using the Cure Violence model, and reallocate more resources away from punitive responses to alleged gang membership toward interventions that have proven effective in reducing violence and other unlawful activity. While the crisis management system and the Cure Violence model are a critical part of ending violence in this city, the city must also focus on what happens if someone actually gets arrested. We cannot assume that because the city is increasing the number of credible messengers and enhancing CMS, that this reaches every member of the community. The fact is, even with CMS, arrests are still happening, and what happens to these New Yorkers, often young people, has been overlooked to an extent. There has been quite a bit of discussion in New York City around different approaches to preventing violence, but there is a lack of programming for alternatives to incarceration. BDS is fortunate to have great relationships with several alternative to incarceration programs that provide many of our clients holistic services and greatly benefit our clients, their families, and their communities. However, more funding is needed for new evidence-informed programming and alternatives to incarceration for New Yorkers that have been arrested, especially for gun possession. But these alternatives will not be successful without sentencing reform at the state level because harsh mandatory minimum sentences make non-jail alternatives unattainable. That is why we also urge the Council to pass a resolution in support of both the End Mandatory Minimums Act and the Youth Justice and Opportunities Act. These are just two of many available legislative solutions in New York that can work in tandem with community investment and crisis management. Mandatory incarceration coupled with a criminal record have lifelong insurmountable consequences for a person, their families, and their communities. BDS welcomes the opportunity to work with the city to create opportunities for people who have been arrested, to participate in ATI programming that addresses gun and other violence as a public health issue, as well as addressing the harm of police profiling and surveillance in low-income Black and Latin and immigrant communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rosalind Morrison, Senior Attorney in the Community Justice Unit of the Legal Aid Society. I provide general counsel support to CMS nonprofit organizations in the borough of Queens. I've worked in CJU for the past year, although I've been a public defense attorney for almost 20 years. I know I look young. I would like to thank City Council Chair Camilla Hanks, as well as the entire City Council panel, for recognizing the importance of the CMS system and for advocating for increased investments in CMS, providing them with the support that they need to continue their work and expand. CMS should always be a priority within the council because it is an important part of the public safety ecosystem. CJU shares the Cure Violence philosophy that violence can be curtailed with early intervention and community engagement. In addition to legal services, the Community Justice Unit conducts extensive community outreach and draws on cross-functional expertise in all divisions of the Legal Aid Society, such as civil, which entails immigration, housing, access to benefits, family law, which includes representation of juveniles, and of course, our criminal defense division. We have connected our CMS partners, participants, and community members to a vast network of services, including, but of course not limited to, Know Your Rights, safe surrenders, navigating family, criminal, and housing courts, certifications of completion, community support at shooting responses, immigration services, housing rights advocacy, a 24-hour, 7 days a week legal hotline, and much more. CJU's collaboration with Red Hook Initiative to create a youth ambassador training is a great example of how CJU provides legal services to community participants. CJU staff teaches youth Know Your Rights and gang database workshops so that they can then present those workshops to their peers. This is important because, of course, information lands differently when it comes from another youth and member of the same peer group. Furthermore, the youths receive certifications and also acquire leadership as well as conflict resolution skills. CMS organizations in New York City have been shown to reduce shootings by 20% in some areas and over 60% in others. The current model has been, I'll speed up. The current model has been very effective, and there is increasing demand for CMS organizations to expand their services due to a number of factors, such as the end of the eviction moratorium, displacement due to rezoning, an uptick in gang activity, inflation, among others. But they need more funding. CMS CV Cure Violence organizations receive a fraction of the funding in comparison to NYPD. NYPD has been allocated over $10 billion for fiscal year 2023. CMS organizations will likely receive less than 1% of this level of funding, even though statistics not only show that they directly reduce violence in their communities, but they also prove that after engaging with CMS organization, community members often choose nonviolent methods of dispute resolution. The support for CMS and organizations envisioned in Bill number 756 of 2022 is vital. However, it would be worthwhile for the council to consider allowing MOCJ the option of outsourcing the provision of these services. For example, some of the smaller, more newly established CMS organizations receive technical support, human resources grant writing, and the like from a larger, more established organizations. This has been apparent with organizations such as Sheltering Arms and Rock Safe Streets in Queens, as well as CAMBA and Bevo in Brooklyn. CJU provides holistic representation, training, and otherwise supports CMS organizations to ensure that they meet their contractual obligations and fulfill the needs of their participants and community members. Another consideration might be a partnership with CMS organizations and the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene to provide mental health services or ramp up those services in catchment areas. Outsourcing, together with an expansion and partnerships with those who have been providing those supportive services outlined in the bill, may be the best way to address the needs of CMS organizations without overburdening MOCJ. I strongly urge this council to pass Bill 756 of 2022, taking into account the recommendations that I've shared, so that CMS organizations can expand their exemplary work and continue to not only make communities safe, but ensure that they thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony, and I agree with you. One question that I have is, I started Staten Island's first youth build program before joining the council, and this introduction of this bill also speaks to that there are organizations that have their ear to the ground that could benefit from this type of training. So I would like to speak with you offline and see how we can build that out in a more productive way. And I very much thank you for your testimony.
Thank you so much. I would love that.
Councilmember Caban, do you have a statement, question? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I mean, first, I just want to say thank you for the work that y'all do. And I fully appreciate the fact that you came and you testified for more money and resources for CMS, when also the reality is that y'all need more money too. I know that you said that you've been a defender for over 20 years, and that's like a rarity. None of us can stay in that job that long anymore. And it's a serious problem, and it's clear that you are doing a lot to support the work and protect the work that crisis management system workers are doing. And so it's an ecosystem, and y'all are a big part of that, and I just want to acknowledge that. But the other thing I would like to hear more about, and it's okay if you're not able to do it today, but something that piqued my interest, is the recommendation to outsource some of this work, because if earlier I asked MOCJ and had serious concerns about their ability to take on more work, because in my opinion, it seemed just like an utter failure to execute the duties and responsibilities they had over the last fiscal year. And so I would love to hear more about, what a plan to outsource some of that work might look like, whether it's now or a follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will. No, go ahead. I can definitely would love to speak with you and work with you on to share some ideas on how to. How some of those partnerships would look like. In a way, this is not to be self-serving of my organization, but the Legal Aid Society is providing the support, and we would like to continue and assist CMS organizations in expanding. There was Councilmember Butcher, I hope I'm pronouncing his name, Butcher, okay. He mentioned how in looking at the data, and there's an issue with the fact that data isn't necessarily being collected, right? But the data that is available has shown that there are 21 precincts where CMS organizations are active. However, there's a need for support, and I believe he said 42 precincts. So only 50% of the needs are being met. We can see from the John Jay report and other sources that this is successful. When, one of the benefits of working on the ground with CMS organizations is seeing them, I guess the saying is you make $1 out of 15 cents. Well, we see that over and over again. They take what funds they have and stretch them, but it shouldn't be this fiscal gymnastics for them to provide the support that communities need. So I'll give you a couple of quick specific examples. So the fact that they're out canvassing every single day, they're out there from particularly King of Kings Foundation in Jamaica, they're out from 2 p.m. often into the night to provide safe passage. They're present, they're talking to people, they're building trust. They have made so many inroads with youths who, when people look at adolescents, this is no judgment, but I'm just going to state what is often a fact. They look at them and they maybe see them dressed in a certain way. They look at the frown or the exterior and they kind of shy away from them. King of Kings and other CMS organizations are out there. They build relationship with these youths. And while it's important to emphasize nonviolence and putting down guns and maybe not picking them up in the first place, but you have to provide an alternative. You have to, show how to engage in conflict resolution in a way that's accessible. So when you have, I call them OGs, when you have the OGs who maybe served some time or, took their lumps, when they go out and they talk to these youths who are maybe kind of beginning the wrong path, what they say, their life experience is so incredibly valuable because there's trust there. They're not just talking at these young people, they're bringing them in, they're becoming the family. And largely, if you look at why someone engages in violence, a lot of times it's lack of support. The family structure has broken down in some ways. People talk about victims of violence versus perpetrator of violence. There's a significant amount of overlap in those groups of people, right? And so the important part is, and a lot of what the CMS organizations are doing on the ground is to acknowledge the pain of maybe when you were a victim, helping you overcome and heal from that, but also encourage you not to inflict that, not to retaliate, and keep that negative cycle going to someone else and someone else's family and your community as a whole. So I hope I touched on answering your question.
You did, thank you. And I would just end by saying, a saying well known in the public defense community, to your point, is that one day somebody is a victim, the next they are a witness in the case, and the next maybe they're the defendant in the case, and there's very much so interconnected. So again, thank you, appreciate it.
And just briefly, if I could add on what Roz was saying, was that, she talked about needing to learn about conflict resolution, and that doesn't change for a young person just because they've been arrested. And they still need to learn conflict resolution or whatever other services they need. They've still come from the same situation. And just because they've then been arrested and are now in the criminal system, there are far fewer opportunities for them if they were not one of the lucky ones, happened to have been helped by the Cure Violence model. And so what we're seeing, especially in the world of gun possession, are virtually no alternative to incarceration options for young people who are in these gun parts in these courtrooms. Many of them are 19 to 24, 25-year-olds who don't have criminal records, who are facing 3.5 to 7 years mandatory minimum jail sentences. And so they're not getting any of the benefit of some of the same things that the members of their community are getting who happen to have interacted with someone who was part of the CMS programming. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you
Oh,
all.
okay.
Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next, we'll hear from Rachel Swainer from the Center for Court Innovation, and then Ramik Williams for Kings Against Violence Initiative as well. No problem, Councilmember.
Clean up on this chair.
Do we have a Ramik Williams in here? Or?
Here, you can sit
Anyone?
here or there, whichever.
Go ahead when you're ready.
My name is Rachel Swanner, and I am the research director at the Center for Court Innovation. Our research team has evaluated programs that address gun violence in New York City and around New York State, and has also recently conducted a unique and participatory research study into why young New Yorkers carry guns. This work has provided us with many lessons learned for effectively reaching the crisis management system's target populations and for understanding the importance of consistent and quality implementation to achieve the results some of these models have demonstrated in the past. I'd like to share some of the findings from our work evaluating programs addressing gun violence around the state, particularly regarding the implementation of programs meant to address gun violence and reach these young gun carriers. First, while some models may be evidence-based, success is not a given in all replications and is highly dependent on modeled fidelity and robust implementation. Second, credible messengers are a key component of many of these programs, but they must be credible with the target population in the present moment for them to be effective. These programs need people within current street networks to validate them for young people to safely and regularly engage in the support services that they want and need. Third, many of these community-based credible messengers who are the right fit for the work have not held traditional jobs before and may need training and support to transition to the nonprofit work world and the technology and communication skills that might entail and that might be expected of them. In Brooklyn, where we piloted and evaluated the Cure Violence model in New York City, we've created a consortium that aims to support emerging nonprofits to sustain funding for, track, and implement this kind of work to program fidelity. Assessing key metrics would demonstrate level of model fidelity. New questions need to be asked that assess that, such as, do we have real credible messengers, and how do we know that they have legitimacy with the young people who might be carrying guns? How much training have we offered them on things necessary to the program, ranging from being trauma-informed to conducting data entry? And are we reaching the target population, or are we serving at-risk people from these communities who are not really likely to pick up or use a gun? Finally, the findings speak to the need for new and innovative approaches to addressing gun violence, particularly for programs that are focused not just on stopping shootings, but that build safe space and supportive community for gun-carrying and gang-involved youth, and provide a safe location for these young people to explore individually and collectively what the world has to offer beyond the block and what the block has to offer the world. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. One question that I have is, do you think that there should be some sort of a boilerplate training manual to where it's standard of what a CMS worker would be? You spoke about young people or people who have been involved, they want to help, but they may not have had a formal job. So again, working in youth development in my previous life, there were always manuals, like leadership development manuals. How do you deal with how do you become a CMS worker? Is there like a boilerplate model that we can look to kind of replicate everywhere, so everyone's kind of baseline as far as what are the skills needed to be able to do this work and sustain this work?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it necessarily exists right now, but I think that that would be a great thing to create, and all of the different roles that the CMS has and what might be expected of them, and that's communicated to new workers as well, so that they're not set up to fail because they don't have the social capital or cultural capital in traditional nonprofits that would make it difficult for them to meet expectations. So I think that training would be really important. A lot of our research We talked to over 330 young people ages 16 to 24 in New York City who were carrying guns. And as somebody just mentioned, the line between victim and defendant on these cases is very blurred, and there's a lot of overlap. And these people have experienced a lot of trauma, both at the individual level. In our study, 88% had, people who had been shot or in their family or in their close networks, and 81% had been shot or shot at themselves, and they've experienced and witnessed a lot of violence. So I do think that there's an important role for trauma-informed work to be built into a lot of this training as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next, we'll hear from Sherry Tulk. Is there Sherry Tulk here? Is there Ramik Williams? Or if anyone else wants to testify who has not yet testified, please come to the front of the room. Seeing nobody, I guess, Councilmember Hanks, you could close off the hearing.
Thank you so much for everyone who's participated in this really important hearing. I appreciate you taking your time. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.